Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Club Fitting Chronicles. I'm your host, Josh. Joining me today is my co-host, Gene. How are you today?
Doing well.
Good. So today we got a special topic for everyone. Would you like to elaborate on what it is today, Gene?
Yeah, we had talked about 11 things I thought about while eating my peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch the other day that could be wrong with your driver, and not including you. And we're going to continue on that with other things that can make your driver harder to hit and kind of point out some things that you can look for or learn about as far as what makes a difference in a driver. And the one thing that I wanted to retouch on, I talked a little bit about testing, where you hit the ball on a driver face. Simplest test ever. Get yourself a whiteboard marker. Put a little dot on the golf ball. Have that dot facing your driver. And it will leave an imprint on your driver face to see how consistent you are with your longer driver. I thought it was really interesting if you watched the match play tournament the other day, last week. Rory, what did he do to hit his 420-yard drive and to keep the ball in the fairway so much compared to what he was doing when he was at the Players? He shortened his driver a half an inch. And he was killing the ball. It was amazing. Shortening that driver is one of the keys to hitting the ball further, because you can go after it when you can actually feel confident that you're going to make good contact. So one of the things I'd encourage you to do, take that simple test on your driver. You can do that same thing on irons, but you have to usually put some like masking tape on the face of your irons, because it doesn't leave as good of a mark as a driver does with the water-based marker. And the nice thing is you can wipe it right off the face of your driver. It doesn't leave a permanent mark. So with that, I'm going to start off with, most of you have heard the term COR or COR, or now it's we also reference the term CT, characteristic time, or coefficient of restitution. That's what COR stands for. And that's how you measure how responsive the face is of a driver. And the thing I want you to understand about that is, number one, unless it's a poorly made driver, the difference between a coefficient of restitution of 0.81 or 0.82 is about 2 yards difference. The maximum coefficient of restitution, according to the USGA, is 0.83. So that's about a 4-yard difference over a fairly poorly made driver, or thick face driver, or poor design as far as the way the spring effect works. The way to understand a driver face or all of your wooden clubs or hybrids is that face is like a trampoline. The bigger the trampoline, the higher the bounce. My wife has a little tiny one trampoline that you can stand on it for work on balance. Well, you're not going to be able to bounce up and, I can't get on it, bounce up and dunk a basketball. But if you get me a big trampoline, I can go way over the backboard with my body, not just my arms. And it's because the trampoline is a bigger thing. It's a bigger surface, so it goes in, goes out. The whole idea behind that spring effect is not that it shoots the ball off the face. It does not do that. What it does is the ball smushes less against the face, which then causes it to lose less energy. The thing you have to understand about the major companies, you make that face closer to the legal limit, which characteristic time is when you submit a club for testing, it's 238 milliseconds that the pendulum can sit on the face of the driver as it's bouncing off of the face. Coefficient of restitution, they're shooting a ball at the golf club head, and they're measuring the speed of the ball coming off the face. But the thing to understand with that whole concept, the thinner you make the face, the hotter the face, the closer it is to that 0.83 limit or 257 millisecond limit in CT time, the more likely it is to break. Well, if you're a major company, how many clubs do you want coming back? Josh, I think you've broken a driver head or two, right?
Unfortunately, I've broken one. I've only broke one.
Okay.
I mean, the face cracked on my my G410, but other than that, I mean, I haven't had any fly off of me, thank God. But I've had multiple faces. Now,
did you have when that before that head broke? Did you notice any increase in distance for a short period of time, maybe a week or two of golf, or did it just?
It came off a little bit dead, and the ball would go straight left.
Okay, but I mean before it broke.
Oh, yes. I noticed it.
Because what's happening is it's getting a little bit more elastic, a little bit more, and then it snaps.
Yeah, I realized.
And that's when the fracture occurs.
Yeah, because I was hitting it really, it's funny because I was playing at Mountain Brook, and I was on the third hole, the par 5, and I was, I hit this drive, and first hole went dead left. I'm like, what the heck? I hit that perfectly. And then, I was on the third tee box, and then I hit it, straight left again. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Because I was, hitting everything else perfectly straight. And my swing felt perfectly fine. And I was telling myself, I was like, I was just hitting this driver good a week ago. And then my playing partner who I was playing with, he said, that didn't sound very good. And I look at my face, and I'm like, wow, you're right. Because there's a big crack smack dab middle of the club head. So yeah, it was weird, very weird.
And it happens more than you'd like it to, as far as the big companies go. And, you have to understand from their perspective, USGA wants to see it come in. I think the coefficient of restitution measurement is 0.822, which is the equivalent of 237 milliseconds or 238 milliseconds of the pendulum sitting on the face. So if you're a major company and you got, somebody's swinging the club at 80 miles an hour and somebody's swinging the club at 115 miles an hour, you're not concerned about the 80 mile an hour swing breaking the club, but you are concerned about the other end. Because what the tests go through is they're going to, before the club is manufactured, there's a cannonball test, and they start shooting balls at the face at, I believe the starting point for our driver that we designed was like 110 miles an hour. They shoot it 1,000 times on the face to see if it'll crack. Nope, didn't crack. So then they up it up to like 120. 1,000 times they're shooting balls into the face at 120 miles an hour. Nope, didn't crack. Then I think the next number is 125, and they do that until it cracks. And the major companies don't want to see it crack. So they're going to come in generally, when we had our CT machine and we would test a driver every once in a while, it was rare to find a driver that was on the upper limits. It was pretty normal to find one that was around 0.81 or so, or like 220 to 215 milliseconds. So you're losing 4 yards.
Do they ever go above 125?
Enough to go out to get a new driver? Pardon?
Do they ever go above 125 when they test that kind of stuff?
They may. That's the problem the tour players have is, you'll hear about maybe 8 or 9 times a year somebody's got a new driver in there because they cracked their face.
Right.
And it's just the fatigue of hitting that metal because it's only a millimeter thick.
Right.
So one of the things for golfers to understand, though, is that legal limit was set in 1998. How fast the ball could come off the face, how much energy could be transferred. So when they're telling you this is new and improved and all, it's going to go miles and miles further because we put special whatever into it, the legal limit is still the legal limit. The ball can only come off the face so fast. One of my favorite things, and I drew this because I didn't want to pull up the website, but I saw something like this. And it's showing me that driver X, or the black one, only comes off the face at 149.8 miles an hour, where the other one's coming off at 150. Well, it doesn't look like it's only 2 miles an hour,
Right,
0.2 miles an hour. It looks like it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
0.2 miles an hour is going to probably translate into about 7 inches, 8 inches. I don't know that I'm going to run out to get a new driver for 8 inches, because I don't know that I'm consistent enough to notice that 8-inch difference. There was a driver a couple years ago where they had it in a wind tunnel, and they're shooting, the wind's going over it, and you could see the smoke coming off of it, and, measuring how fast, and it was the fastest driver ever. It was most aerodynamic. The only problem is the driver's only in that position for about the last 1.5 feet of the golf swing. Well, okay, so in your aerodynamic testing, it's going 0.1 miles an hour faster. How much will that transfer to going in that last 1.5 feet of my swing? Not a whole lot. So one of the things to be careful about, I've heard this tale of woe. Well, I was really hitting my driver well, but I wanted a little bit more distance. So I got one of those newer drivers that hits the ball further, and I lost distance. Well, that's because even if you hit it exactly the same way, if everything else was the same and allowed you to swing the same, not going to see a whole lot of difference in distance. The only thing you're going to see is maybe a little bit more forgiveness. And the thing I want you to understand is, by shortening the driver, you won't need as much forgiveness because you'll be hitting it more regularly on center. So kind of tying all that together, most golfers worry about getting the hottest face driver. I would worry more about, where do I hit the ball? Am I hitting the ball where I want it? The best place to hit the ball on a driver is probably right about in here, just slightly to the toe side. And the only reason it's slightly to the toe side is actually the toe side is traveling about 7 miles an hour faster than the heel side in a golf swing. And so get out here, you start losing because of the face. It's just, you're not hitting the center of the trampoline, you're hitting out on the edges, and you don't bounce as high out on the edges of the trampoline as you do in the center. So the ball's going to smush more, it's going to lose more energy, the ball's not traveling as far. Another thing to think about with the driver, I see a lot of people teeing it up pretty low, which causes me to hit down on the ball, okay, which is going to cause more spin. But if your face has curvature going this way, which 99.999% of drivers do, what that curvature does, when I hit it near the top part of the face, it actually reduces spin slightly. Now I'm losing a little ball speed because I have more loft, but it's gonna it tries to almost equal out because I have a little tiny bit less spin. But if I'm hitting it down on the bottom, I am producing more spin. Now, spin is not the danger that most people think. If I hit a ball with 2,000 RPMs of spin versus 3,000 RPMs of spin, I think the carry distance is about a foot. The rollout might be affected a little bit more.
Right.
But because the ball is going to climb more because of spin. But the big thing to understand is, when I'm looking at that, where I'm striking the ball, I want to make sure I'm striking the ball above center of the equator of the driver. I want to make sure that, if anything, it's a hair to the toe side, because that's going to give me the best possible distance that I could achieve out of it. when you see all the, like my little beautiful, my students love my artwork. When you're talking about the testing that that every company always, they'll show you our driver outperforms. You have to understand that the way the tests are done is to find how to make sure that driver outperforms the other drivers. It's not a test where they're going, okay, let's do everything using the best of each driver against each other. It's no, okay, our driver is designed to do this a little bit more, or do, maybe we've made our driver a little tiny bit longer than everybody else's. So on the robot testing it, we get a little tiny bit more speed. And so our ball goes further. Well, but when you put it in a golfer's hand, they can't hit it. So the testing results, unless you swing like the robot and you hit the ball, because they can set it up so that, they're hitting the exact spot they want to hit. Don't look at the testing results. The testing results are meaningless to you unless you hit the ball just like the robot.
Right.
MOI, you hear every once in a while you start hearing about MOI, and there's a number of MOIs about a golf club, but two things I want to point out. One, if you're a slicer, you want to look at the shaft extend, just it doesn't go into the head. It ends about right there. But you're looking at the distance from that point to the center of the face. The smaller that distance is, the easier it is for you to get this closed. The further away it is, the harder it is to get that club closed. Yesterday, Bill out at Las Colinas.
Of course.
He was hitting my driver with my 55-gram shaft. And he was like falling in love, and I thought he was going to hit me over the head with the club so he could steal it and run off with it. The swing weight on my driver is at D7, and his comment was, I don't feel like I have to swing it. I just get it back, and it just naturally comes through, where mine, I feel like I got to help it through, and I lose sight of the head and stuff. But this distance is greater on his. Well, if you've played golf with Bill, he hits a little fade from time to time, and sometimes it goes from a little fade to a bigger little fade.
Yeah, power cut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He hit, I would say he hit 12 of 13 fairways.
Oh, okay. That's good.
With my driver, and it was all right down the middle, maybe a 4 or 5 foot fade, or a 5 foot draw. Everything was just, and he was just, wow, I love that. And it's easier for him to square up. So that's the one thing. The secondary thing is, in addition to that is, he sets this up a little tiny bit open. His driver is already a little tiny bit open.
Right.
And that's just the way he swings a golf club.
Right.
But he was actually able to get the club head back to square.
What is the weight on his driver? Was his any?
His driver is a 1/4 inch longer, and it is around D1.
Okay, yeah. So that's a pretty significant difference.
Significantly head heavier.
Yeah.
And significantly easier for him to square up, because the thing that, I started thinking about months ago with him, I've never seen anyone hit a 3-wood better than Bill. Mm-hmm. He can outdrive his driver sometimes with this 3-wood, simply because the head size is smaller. So that distance from here to here is smaller. Right. And he never loses that thing right.
And you see a lot of people hit their 3-wood further than their driver. They're like, why do I hit my 3-wood?
Well, and there's a couple of reasons. There's a couple of reasons that happens. One is it can be because of the loft. You can get the ball up in the air higher. It's shorter. You have more confidence. You might even be swinging it faster than your driver. And again, what do most golfers do? They lose the ball right. That little smaller head allows them to square up to the head a little bit easier,
Right.
causing the ball to go a little straighter, which then gives me more confidence on the next tee box that I can hit this straight. And the confidence just continues to multiply.
Sure.
Now, the other MOI that you hear a lot more about is, and the legal limit for that is 5,900 grams centimeters squared, is the face MOI. And that simply is how much twisting will the head do when I hit it off center? How much resistance to twisting is there?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, a bigger driver, I don't get the big, toe out to the right and snapping it back in. I don't get the big, pull to the left and coming back in with a bigger head. But on the other hand, if the bigger head puts the center of the face further away from the shaft, it also means that it's maybe starting out a little bit more right. I hit it on the toe, it goes a little bit more right, but it doesn't come back quite as much as a smaller headed driver would have. So that MOI can be a benefit.
Right.
Whoops. It can be a benefit, and it can also be something that causes me a little bit of issue. But don't race out to buy, the legal limit is 5,900 on a driver. Most drivers today are around 5,000, 5,100, 5,200. The difference between that and 5,900, you wouldn't see.
And you're talking about MOI,
It's not enough of a difference. MOI.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Gram centimeters squared.
Okay.
So the big thing to understand, what that bigger head does, what the bigger iron head does, it's taking, I got a barbell and I have 400 pounds because, I'm pretty buff. Right, and I have all the weights pushed to the middle. That's the small head. I can twist that all over the place.
Yeah.
You stick the 400 pounds, the 200 on each end, and try to move it around. The harder to move it around. That's what a big head driver does.
Sure.
So it can be a little bit of a benefit. It can hurt you a little bit.
So it wouldn't
just kind of depends on what you're doing. Correct. It doesn't. It just means the face will open less or close less on off-center hits.
Sure, but some people
which gives you a little tiny bit more distance or straightness forgiveness.
Right. Which some people would.
But if your face is already open and you.
Right. Okay. Then that makes sense. Okay. Got it.
So then, we talked about volume a little bit when we're talking about how big the MOI of the head. The legal limit's 460. Like this is our head. We got a warning label because when they measured it, it was 456. And so because it was close to 460, they said, well, just be careful when you're manufacturing it, that you don't manufacture bigger than that. And there's a little bit of a plus or minus on that. Again, you can create that space. Our driver, when you look at it from, sorry about that. When you look at it from this perspective, doesn't look that big.
Yeah. Because
a lot of our volume is out here.
Right.
It's in here. You see a number of drivers where this doesn't come out. It just goes straight in.
Sure.
But you can create volume in a lot of different ways.
Right.
The only benefit again of a 400 is it's a little easier to close.
Okay.
But if you're needing, if you're all over the face, it's also going to be a little easier than to open. If you're, hitting it on the toe, it's going to want to spin open a little bit more because you have less resistance to twisting. So it's kind of that you have to decide for yourself what is best for me.
Right. Well, what do you think about the companies that market high MOI? You see a lot of companies that market, the most forgiving driver, high MOI. What do you think about that? Well,
the thing is it doesn't make that big of a difference.
Right.
It really doesn't. If you have an old wooden driver, the MOI on those was probably around 2,500
Sure.
versus 59. Huge difference.
Right.
But the difference between 5,000 and 5,900, not that big of a difference from all the testing information I've ever read.
Only a couple yards.
It's not even a couple yards. It's just how much, more down the target line the ball's going to be.
Sure. Okay. All right. Got it.
So it's more of a forgiveness thing than anything else. One of the things also that golfers I get asked a lot, you see this channel here. Why do some golf clubs have channels like that? Why do some golf clubs have channels like that? And then you find others that don't have channels like that. That's what breaks up the sound.
Oh.
So when you're looking, if you think of that old Nike tin can that used to sound like an auto accident every time it was hit.
You're talking about the square?
You remember that head?
The square? Yeah. Horrendous club. I can't I didn't even know how Tiger played that thing.
Well, he didn't.
Oh.
He looked at it and go, nah, I can't hit that. But the whole idea of that, the reason it sounded so awful was because it's perfectly flat on the bottom. So if you're looking at drivers and sound is important to you, one of the things to look for, what did they do to break up the sound? There's generally speaking, there's going to be some kind of indentation in it just to break up the sound a little bit.
And that's not just solely for aerodynamics, right?
Oh, no.
It's not going to be like a rocket ship where it's just going to blast off, You have these little speed slots. I remember I had these top flight irons, and they had this little crevice at the bottom of the iron, and this little speed slot, me and my friends would call it, and just you gain so much speed with those little speed slots. It's just like a rocket ship, just takes off. But come to find out, it's probably because of the sound. I'm sure, so it didn't sound clanky or sound awful to the human ear. Because like you said in one of our previous I think it was our second or third episode, we were talking about people like they hear when they hit the club, and that also affects like how they like the club and how they hit the ball. You were saying you had a driver that you had, and it just sounded terrible. Was it a driver? I believe it was a driver you said you had, and it just sounded, like you said, a tin can. I don't know if it was the square driver, or it was a different driver.
But. Yeah, no, it was that Nike square driver. Somebody hit it behind me, and I crawled out of my skin.
That's what it was.
I started looking for where was the accident.
Right.
Because that's what it sounded like. It sounded like somebody just crushed a car.
Right. So with that being said, I mean, it's extremely detrimental to, the sound of the club is extremely detrimental to, how someone hits it. Or like the
definitely
club.
Can affect.
Yeah.
When I pick out a ball based on part of my testing when I'm looking for a golf ball is what does it sound like coming off my putter? Yes. If I hear a click, I don't want it.
Yes.
Because that tells me it doesn't transfer into how hard did I hit it. It just, I'm like,
you're just
I don't want to hear
the
a
sound.
click.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's mostly a preference thing, and golfers are big, people of preference. I mean, some people like some things a certain way, but I mean, there's some people, for example, let's say that the ping iron. I love ping irons. I mean, I love them. I absolutely love them. I have a set of I-500s that I've had for forever, and I absolutely love them. But some people hate the sound of it. They say, it sounds like a hybrid. Well, I don't think that. So it's solely a preference thing, but I mean, it makes sense. But when people are trying to design a golf club or market these golf clubs to people, they're trying to base it for a general audience. And like I said, it could be a hit or miss for some people.
Yeah, definitely. I can remember we were waiting with bated breath as Clay Long walked up to hit our driver head for the first time in our hitting studio. And we weren't concerned about how much distance with the ball speed coming off the face. We knew what all that was going to be because, when we're only making 300 of them, we can measure each face.
Sure.
And we were more concerned about what's it going to sound like. Right. And now the first hit, we got a winner. It sounded great.
Right.
The last thing I want people to understand, manufacturer tolerances. When you go to buy a drive, we had talked about a couple episodes ago about going to the club maker, X's fitting days, and you're hitting this club and you're going, I love it. And then they sell you a different one.
Right.
Same model, it's the same club.
Yeah.
Well, when we designed our driver, we designed it at, trying to remember our lofts. I think we picked 9 degrees and 10.5 degrees. We made driver heads at those 2 lofts.
Okay.
And we wanted them to be, it was 9 and 10.5 square. So what we got, and it was, we went to a foundry that produces major companies' clubs. So it was the same workers, same hands, doing the same kind of work that they would do on everybody else's. They got paid the same kind of money that they would have gotten paid to do anybody else's. Our driver lofts were between 8.25 and 11.5.
Oh.
Now, some of the 9-degree drivers came in at 10.25. Usually you won't see a lot of less loft. Like our 9-degree driver came in at, the strongest loft I think was 8.5. Our 10.5 degree driver, the strongest loft was probably around close to 10. Most of them are on the minus side.
Okay.
Our face angles came in from about 2 degrees open to 2 degrees closed. And that was just out of 300 drivers. And we measured each driver head and we tested the CT on because of the tolerance in manufacturing.
Oh, wow. So it could just change like that, even through something?
Well, it's just from one driver to the next. I mean, it's not an exact science. You're not reproducing, a circuit board that has to be exactly the same as the last circuit board. This is a driver.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's gonna be some small differences when you get it.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, that small difference, again, 2 degrees open versus square.
Exactly.
That's 12, 13 yards at 200 yards.
Right.
Yeah. And so the big thing for golfers to understand is, check the specs. I got an email from a gentleman in Minnesota, and he had listened to the last podcast, and he went into a golf shop, and they didn't know how to check the specs. I was like,
That's
maybe I should have opened up a shop in Minnesota when I was there last summer.
Right.
But, you need to know what those really are. Don't go by the numbers. We didn't even put a loft on our heads because we knew the loft doesn't mean that's the loft.
Right.
We measured the loft. And then, whatever we needed, we would find that in our inventory.
Well, it's funny you say that too, Gene.
Hopefully
and I'm going to interrupt you here for a second, and I want golfers, because this is a tip that I heard from Ross, and Ross, he tells me every time he gets his irons, because he was sponsored by Ping, and then now he's with Callaway, and he says even though his specs are the same for no matter what manufacturer, he gets the same specs. But when he gets his clubs, he always checks his lofts and lies to make sure that they are all, because he said one time he got a set of irons, same specs and same specs he's had for years, but he was hitting the ball differently. And he said it's not that the club head was any different. He checked his loft and lies, and a few of the lie angles were off. So it's just, simple things like that. And like you said, quality control, especially with these big manufacturers, is very, I wouldn't say hard to control, but anything can happen. And it's interesting you say, you could get a driver and they could be a few degrees off. With that being said, I mean, that is a huge difference. just a few degrees and, even a driver head. And even in an iron, your lie angle's off and you could hit the ball completely different, even if your specs are the same as the other golf clubs that you had before. So just with that, just having that in mind for some of these golfers, when you do get something in the mail or you get something shipped over to you, or even if you get something from the store, it's not the same club you hit in the hitting bays, right? Because it's just a snap-on club and they give you, the off the rack. Make sure you check those because, you gave the visual the other day with the driver, the face angle. I mean, that makes a huge difference. And then people are like, well, why am I hitting the ball, 30 yards right? Or why is the ball all of a sudden, I'm pulling everything. And then now you're trying to mimic your swing because golfers, like you said, they like to change and adapt to their clubs most of the time, right? But if they're hitting it, wayward, during a round, then they try to, adapt and overcome during the round, and then they mess up the swing, and then they get out of loop and creates bad habits, yada yada yada. So with that being said, I mean, you kind of got to be meticulous and check those things every once in a while, and they could even change on you even when you have them for so long. You could leave them in the car or something, and then you're playing a bunch of rounds of golf, and they could change on you. So just to routinely check up on those things, because like you said, even a half centimeter or half an inch off is a big difference.
Oh yeah, but on the other hand, if they're set, it's rare that they, unless you like hitting the ball off of the cart path a lot.
Yeah.
Or you have an anger management problem and you like to find a root and smack the club head against the root a couple dozen times.
That's not me anymore, Gene. Don't be hitting at anything.
Well, once they're set, they're really pretty good. So hopefully this answers some more of the questions that I was kind of being hit with over the course of the last couple of weeks. And hopefully our listening audience will be able to use this information. So one thing I do want to share, and Josh and I talked a little bit about this, looking for ways for me to save a little bit of money, because it's cost me $150 a month to share information with you. And I love sharing information. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. That's why I'm doing it. I want to share information. Mm-hmm. And then I keep thinking of all the little things that would be wonderful to show you, but that costs me more money. And I go, well, okay. Do I want to buy my wife a nice this, or do I want to share this with all the other people of the world? And my wife always wins. So what I'm asking for is if you're in a men's club, please, if you listen to us, share us with them. If you need business cards with our information, send me an email with your address. I will send you business cards. Because the more views, the more downloads we get, hopefully we'll get somebody who's interested in having some commercial time on us. Mm-hmm. And again, I know that for you that's terrible, but for me it makes it okay. I don't have to pay $150 a month. Maybe I only have to pay $100 a month to share information with you. Sure. If you're in the Phoenix area, if you have a men's club and you want somebody to come in and talk a little bit about golf clubs, be happy to do that. Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, hey, please listen to us, download us, because our growth has been fantastic. You guys have been awesome as listeners. We're up to about 400 downloads a month. We need to probably double that to get to the point where people will start entertaining us commercially. I find it fascinating that we're in the top 20% of all podcasts right now, just by our numbers. So if that can help, if you're on Reddit, I don't know what that is, but I had somebody go, I know about Reddit. You should publicize on Reddit. I don't know what that is. Yeah. I'm 65 years old. I don't do that. Yeah. Golf WRX. I used to answer a lot of questions on there. I haven't done that anymore in the last couple of years. So if you want to put us out there and let people know we exist, that would be wonderful, because it's more impressive coming from you than me telling people, hey, you should listen to me.
Sure.
So,
sure.
Anything you want to add to that, Josh?
Yeah, any advertisement opportunities would be wonderful. If you could promote, this is kind of like a business to us, we don't make any money off of it. This is all voluntary at the end of the day. But like Gene said, we'd love to be advocates for, club fitting and just spreading information and, spreading what could be common knowledge to some of you guys, or what, can't be common knowledge. Some people learn some new things every episode, which, we hope for that, obviously. But, once again, we're super grateful for all of our listeners and viewers, and no matter where you're at, we'll support you. And if you guys have any questions, our email is at clubfittingchronicles@gmail. Send Gene or I an email, and we'll respond to you. And I'm just super appreciative of all the support we're getting. And like you said, to be in the top 20% of the podcast, is pretty good, I would say. Just this being a little brainchild of ours. One day we're playing golf at Las Colinas, and we just had this idea, hey, because this is when COVID was going on and podcasts were becoming a big thing. And, we were talking, we're like, anybody could really do a podcast, and I don't think there's a lot of podcasts about this. And then, we ended up elaborating on it. And then, here we are now, and we're on episode 12. So if you guys have anything that you would like to share with us, or would you like to join us on one of our podcasts? We're an open book. We're more than welcome to do that. And if you guys want to spread some awareness about something, or like I said, even advertise something, we are more than welcome to do that. So that's pretty much all from me, Gene. Anything else?
No, I got a tea time in an hour and 27 minutes. So, no, I just, again, thank you for being loyal listeners. Alabama, look out. I'm coming on the 23rd of May.
Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen.
If you see an old guy, it's probably me. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a blessed Easter. And we'll see you sometime after that.